Hey guys, in this video I'll show you how I took a photo from this to this, all within Lightroom. If you want to follow along with the edit step by step, I'll post a link down below so that you can download the raw file that I'm using in this tutorial. So let's get started. First, let's just bring this file into Lightroom. I'll click and drag on the file and just drag it onto the Lightroom icon down here. There's a few ways to import photos, but this is probably the easiest. We'll wait a second for that to open. You can see up in the top left corner it's importing. So we'll just select our photo here and then we'll click the import button. We're going to start in the library module, but in order to edit we'll want to jump over into develop. So let's do that. And this is what we've got. This photo is taken from Huaime Kamin waterfall in Thailand. It's very green. The waterfall itself is quite nice and very symmetrical, but I want to do a few adjustments to pop out the water and also make the brush back here look a bit better. I think the first thing I'll do, to me this photo looks a bit blue, especially here in the water. So I might just warm this up a bit by adjusting the color balance, maybe something around there. So I brought it up to about 5150 Kelvin. And if we undo, we can do that by hitting the backslash to see the before and after. We've gone from this bluer version to this warmer version. I think that looks pretty good. I might change this tint away from green a little bit, so I'll just boost that from 32 to 35, pretty minor. Right now the sky is quite white. Doesn't really bother me, but if we hover over this triangle, you can see that we are clipping the whites a little bit up here. Not too worried about it though. I might even bring up the highlights a bit more. Normally I wouldn't do this, but the sky is not really the focal point of this photo. I want to pop out the water a bit. I might also drop the shadows. So when I'm doing this, I'm creating more contrast. To me, that's fine for now. So let's move down and see what else we can do. Usually I'll boost the clarity just a little bit. I think what this will do is bring out some of the details in the water. And let's see. Don't want to touch dehaze quite yet. Oops, set that to 0. Let's just see what this does if we do a before and after. So that's the before, and this is the after with about 10 clarity. I could always play around with this, but I think 10 was nice. Let's boost the vibrance a little bit. This is a really bright, colorful scene, so I want to bring out those colors a bit more. I think around 12 or so, 10, 12 should be nice. All right, let's keep going down. I'm not going to touch the tone curve here, but one thing I will definitely touch is the HSL. So this stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. For me, there's too much green in this, and it's all kind of the same shade. So I'm going to go into hue. If I pull the green over, you can see I'm giving it more of a yellow tint. I think something like that looks better. So I'm sliding this green slider over towards yellow. I also want to pop into saturation and give that some more vibrance and saturation. Now I'll go into luminance and play with my green as well. I think I do want to boost this just a bit, somewhere around 40. So now we've done some things with the greens. Let's do some things with the yellows. The main two colors we have in this scene are green and yellow. So let's try and manipulate them a bit. This, if we pull it to the left, it will become more orange, to the right more green, but that green does not look good at all to me. So let's pull this down, I think somewhere around there. -50 or so looks pretty good, maybe a bit less. Saturation, let's boost that again just to see how it's affecting this. I think I want to pull that up to around there as well, and we'll probably do something with luminance a little bit. Let's go back. We don't really have any reds here. We don't really have any purples or magentas. In fact, I'm just going to desaturate all these two all the way because I don't think they're really present in the scene, but if they are, I don't really want to emphasize them any extra. Let's go to hue, close this. I'll go to hue and let's just see if we can do anything with oranges here. You can see down in these rocks we've got some orange. So I think if we make that a bit more towards red, it pops it out nicely. You can see if we want to do anything with saturation. I might even desaturate this a bit just to add more emphasis to the waterfall. So this is kind of the addition by subtraction thing that we've mentioned in the past. Let's play around with the luminance. I think that I'll boost this a tiny bit, but I don't doesn't bother me too much. It's not really that important. So let's keep going down. I think that's it for HSL. I'm not going to do any split toning. I think the detail is probably fine. And I'll turn on remove chromatic aberration, but I don't think it will do anything. And I think I'm pretty okay with this, except we'll add a tiny bit of vignette just to pull the eye towards the middle. You don't want to go too far in this, I'll just do -10. But if we undo that and redo, you can see we're pulling the eye more towards the center. So let's come back up and we'll give a second look to some of these things. If we see the before and after, again, that's with the backslash key. I think that we've come pretty far already, but one thing I want to do is emphasize the water in here a bit more. So one way we could do that is with this adjustment brush. I'm going to make this brush really big by hitting the right square bracket. To make it smaller, you can use the left square bracket on your keyboard. Right now I've got some settings in here already. I'm going to turn them off just by double clicking the effect, and I will now do some new settings. Let's pop this out a little bit, maybe add some exposure, and I can click there. Now I'm in my adjustment brush settings. That effect was quite subtle, so we can always make changes by just boosting it up a bit more. I might try to do that a different way though. Maybe I will play only with the highlights and not the exposure. I think I'll do a bit of both. I'll pull up the highlights and pull up the exposure some. So if we were to click on this and delete it, we can see what we had and what we just adjusted. I think that I'm going to boost the clarity in here a little bit more. You can see if we go really far, it's really popping out those lines, but I don't want to do too much. I think somewhere like that. And if I start moving the dehaze down, it will soften this up a bit and give it more of a dreamy kind of feel. So I think something like that is nice. Let's delete this one more time and come back. You can see what we've done. So I think that's pretty good overall. Let's look at some other things that we can do. Right now I want to add a sunburst up in the sky. I've showed you guys this before if you've seen past videos, but let's try and accentuate this area and just give some more energy to the scene. So I'll hit the new while I'm in this adjustment brush panel. I have some custom settings that I tend to use for this effect to add a sunburst, so I'm going to pull up the temperature all the way. I'll pull up the exposure to 1 stop. I'll take the contrast down all the way and then add about 50 for the shadows and about 30 for the blacks. So I'll want a pretty big brush for this. I'm just going to click one time up here, and this will be emulating the effect of the sun shining through. So for me, that's not quite enough. Let's try that again. I'll come down further. You can always click twice to add it in again. I might even do 3 times. And so now I do like the effect that this is having, but one thing I might change is that in here, I think it's kind of blending these colors in a little bit too much. They've become a little bit muddy for me. So if we want to start subtracting this out, you can hold down the Option key on Mac or Alt on Windows and then just start painting it out. And so I think in this area here, I'll just paint that out a little bit. You want to do this with a very soft brush, and so you'll want to have your feathering at a pretty high amount. This will just blend in the effect so that there's a bit of a transition. I might add in another similar effect in certain areas. So I'll click again on the adjustment brush, go to new. This time maybe not so much warmth and not so much exposure, but I'll keep that around 50. And the other settings I'll keep the same, and I'll just want to make this smaller. Again, that's the left bracket key, and I'll put it into a few other areas where it could maybe use a bit more. I think overall that's pretty good. You can see it's even bringing out this little water spot that I had on my lens. So a couple other things I might do. Let's go to the graduated filter. Again, the focal point here is the waterfall itself, so I want to lead the viewer's eye into that. We already added some vignette, but let's do a gradient as well. I'm going to double click on this effect just to zero everything out, and I want to add a gradient down here so that we can darken this foreground. I really like the foreground in this photo just because it frames the photo a bit and it leads your eye into the waterfall, but we can take some emphasis away from that, I think, just by putting in a dark gradient here. So this will fade the effect out, and by the time we reach the waterfall above this top line, we won't have the effect at all. You can play with that by moving it down and up or moving it around, but I think I've got it in a pretty good spot there. I might make one new gradient as well, a really small one down here at the bottom, just to really darken this bottom part. Something around there. So negative 0.63 is what I just did. If I think that effect is too harsh, I can just click on my graduated filter again, click on the thing that I just made, and maybe extend the effect so that it's over a longer area. Let's see. I think overall this is pretty good. We can always see the before and the after, and it's already a lot more dramatic than it was. If I was editing this in Photoshop, I'd take out this weed, but it's really difficult to do this kind of object removal within Lightroom. So we'll just leave it in there for now. It's off to the side anyway, so it's not bothering me. Let's play around with this a little bit more. I'll make a really big adjustment brush, and maybe I'll just add a tiny bit of warmth and maybe a little bit more exposure into the waterfall. So this is just going to make this a little bit more yellow or orange, a little bit warmer. If we think it's too much, we can just play with these sliders and bring them back down. I think I like that overall, about 20 for that, and I could play with the exposure as well. Obviously that's too far, but something around, 0.20 is also nice for me. So I'll get out of that. I'm not sure there's too much more I want to do here. You could always give it a second look, but I think I'm pretty happy with this photo. Maybe I'll just see what I can do with the vignette a bit more. So right now we started with a vignette of -10. If we go to that, I think that's a little too much, and it's pretty obvious that we're starting to apply a vignette. Maybe -15 is all right for me. So I think we'll stop there and call it a day. If you want to export this, you can right-click on the photo, go to Export, Export. I'm just going to put it on my desktop. I don't need to put it in a subfolder, but I'll just call this Waterfall. You can see I'm saving it as a JPEG file. If you want to open this in Photoshop, you'll want to save it as a PSD, and then you can also come down here and hit Open in Photoshop. And again, you'll want to save this at 300 pixels per inch. I think the rest of these settings look pretty good for me. So I'll export that. Just like when we imported the photo, it's going to export up in the top left corner. So we'll just wait for that to go out. So it took about a minute for that to export. Let's minimize this. I should have it on my desktop, and here it is. So if I open that, here's our final image. And I think we've done pretty well with this. So just one last time, if we want to take a look at the before and after, we'll come back into Lightroom. I'll hit the backslash key before and after. So I really like this photo, and hopefully you guys like it too. So I hope that was useful. If this is your first time using Lightroom, I'd like to invite you to check out the video down below. In that video, I did a full, it's about 1 hour, 70 minutes, full tutorial through all the different functions in Lightroom. Hopefully you have a better idea of how to use all these things after watching that. If you'd like to participate in a future contest, editing contest, we organize them pretty regularly these days. So you can check out the group down below where we're organizing workshops and other types of things like that at the same time. So hopefully that helped you guys out, and I'll see you in the next video.